Their perceived competitors out of the market, and they're there to make sure they have a privilege their competitors don't. And these are people that we call evil because they're screwing up the system. They're screwing up the system that made us the most prosperous people on earth. Woodrow Wilson, in an essay entitled Socialism and Democracy, suggests that socialism stands for unfettered state power, which trumps any notion of individual rights. This is a quote, it proposes that all idea of a limitation of public authority by individual rights be put out of view, and that no line can be drawn between public and private affairs, which the state may not cross at will. He should study as Jefferson. Wilson also explained that he found nothing wrong with socialism in principle, since it was merely the logical extension of genuine democratic theory. Socialism gives all power to the people to carry out their will through the exercise of governmental power, unlimited by any undemocratic idea of individual rights. He went on to write, in fundamental theory, socialism and democracy are almost, if not quite, one and the same. They both rest at bottom upon the absolute right of the community to determine its own destiny and that of its members. So here you see the move away from individual rights to now we have community rights. And somehow the community, what is and what is not the community, never gets really defined. That's also something that has to be defined on the fly, I guess, by the succeeding generation. Private property versus the redistributive state. It's interesting to me how tyrants always know how important private property is. A lot of people who like to remain free don't understand that, but the tyrants always do. Private property is essential to personal freedom and liberty because it enables an individual to gain independence from the state by accumulating land, money, and wealth. James Madison, this is a quote from Madison, government is instituted no less for the protection of property than of the persons of individuals. So Madison is saying your property is just as important as your life is. The protection of your property is every bit as important as the protection of life. This was something that obviously Karl Marx understood, because Karl Marx understood, he said, the theory of the communist may be summed up in a simple sentence, abolition of private property. So he grasped the idea here. But for progressives, one of their hallmarks, and something that the current administration in Washington makes no effort to conceal whatsoever, one of the hallmarks is the whole concept of redistribution. The idea that your money and your property are only yours if the state doesn't determine that there is a higher or better use for it. And of course you don't have much to say something. John Adams, though, another one of the founders, said this. He said, the moment the idea is admitted into society that property is not as sacred as the laws of God, and that there is not a force of law and public justice to protect it, anarchy and tyranny commence. Now, there's a Nobel Prize winner in economics at George Mason University. His name is James Buchanan, who a couple of years ago at a conference in Washington, D.C., made this comment. He said, a free society cannot simultaneously exist with a redistributive state. Now, that's a scary thought, because we're currently a free society that we're being told that we have to become a redistributive state, and the future's not going to happen. You have to be one or the other. Rule of law. Is everybody familiar with the statute? Sometimes it's called justitia, other times it's called the statute of justice. It's a female figure. In one hand she's holding the scales, in the other hand she's holding the sword. and the figure is depicted blindfolded. Now, why would justice be depicted blindfolded? Well, the reason for that is, the symbolic reason for that is, no matter who you are, when you come before the bar of justice, the law is applied. Well, social justice is a little different, because social justice is based upon who you are. That will determine how the law is applied. So, it might be different depending on your sex. It might be different depending upon your religion or lack thereof. It may be different depending on race, age. It could be dependent on a number of things. But the fact of the matter is, the rule of law is an objective statement. Social justice is a subjective statement. The other thing that people don't readily admit who believe in social justice is not meant to be an add-on to the rule of law. It is meant to be a replacement for the rule of law. Constitutionally limited government. Moving right on down the list here. James Madison wrote, "Every word of the Constitution decides a question between liberty and power." I'm sure y'all, being the group you are well familiar with our Ninth Amendment, the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to divide or disparage others retained by people. The 10th Amendment, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, or reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So, what you have here in a nutshell is a Constitution that makes no effort to identify all of the rights. But it says, if the power of government is not defined in this document, it doesn't happen. It's unenumerated rights and enumerated powers. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's not always the way it is. In our world today, where people believe in living constitutions, which can mean pretty much anything they damn well is. At another conference, about 2 or 3 Christmases ago, I attended a conference. The speaker was Clarence Thomas. And I was able to ask a question, which was, does the whole concept of a living constitution, does that repudiate the whole notion of having a written constitution to begin with? And he said, you're either applying the text of the Constitution or you're simply making it up as you go along. And that's exactly what the politicians want to do. They don't want to be hamstrung by this Constitution thing. They want to have the freedom to basically make it up and say, well, who performs the role of sovereign? Well, Harry Truman, who was actually a very smart man, never went to college, but he was a great reader. But he was wrong on this point. He apparently had a sign on his desk when he was president that says the buck stops here. But there's just one little problem with that. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of our whole system of government. In this country, it was always recognized, and it was clearly recognized at the beginning, that the sovereign is the people themselves. We the people. Under the English system, which a lot of our ancestors came from, the people are basically sovereign on election. And then, for all intents and purposes, they cease to exist until the next election. Gordon Wood, who's probably the most famous historian on the founding of this country, in a 2006 book called Evolutionary Characters, wrote this. He said, in England, unlike America, the people gave up their full sovereignty to their legislature. In the English Constitution, the nation and the government is considered as one, whereas by ours, the nation and the government are distinct. There was a Virginian who lived about the same time as Madison and Jefferson, who was friends with both of them, actually was related to Madison, who was also named John Taylor. The historians refer to him as John Taylor of Caroline County, Virginia. John Taylor wrote, all our governments are limited agencies of the people, and the electoral process that created them did not eclipse the continued existence of the sovereign people. So the sovereign is unique. We lose that when we forget. We lose that when we fail to act as the sovereign. Form of government. A lot of people, if you just stopped 10 people on the street and said, what form of government do we have here in America? I would be willing to bet you 9 out of 10 of them would say democracy. And that's exactly what the progressives want you to think. Our form of government is a republic, a democratic republic, and a republic. Webster's Dictionary defines a republic as a state in which the supreme power rests on all the citizens entitled to vote and is exercised by representatives elected by them and responsible to them. Two important ideas there. Number one, people are sovereign. But number two, the representatives don't have the right to just really go do anything they please or pass any laws they please. Because we have a structure in place already where the people are sovereign and they have rights, and those rights can't be touched. It doesn't matter how good an idea it might seem like at the moment, those ideas are off limits for the representatives. Woodrow Wilson said democracy is bound by no principle of its own nature to say itself nay as to the exercise of any power. That's part of being an intellectual, that you write sentences that are nearly incomprehensible. You could have said that much easier, but that would make it seem like a common. I like the definition better by another George Mason University economist, Walter Williams, who says democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what to have for lunch.